Cuzco. This is a game which is mechanically and connected and thematically connected with Tikal, pretty much a classic in modern gaming. I played it and reviewed it recently, and my assessment was that, in the 1990s, the approach of Tikal to action points was pretty revolutionary. It won the Spiel because of that. But by today's standards, it also feels a little slow, a little clunky, a little too prone to analysis paralysis. We just have games that flow better, and we have higher standards, paradoxically maybe, in part, standards that Tikal helped establish. So Cuzco, again, many similarities, but I can already tell you, you have an action point system which, in my opinion, flows a lot better than what you have in Tikal. In Cuzco, we control groups of Inca settlers represented by thematic meeples, and we'll place them on the board as they turn this area into farmlands, villages, and cities, and it's gonna be very cool doing that. Now, we have an action point system. You have 6 action points per turn, so much more contained, so to speak, than what you have with the 10 action points in Tikal, which is one of the reasons why the game may lead to analysis paralysis. Now, may lead to analysis paralysis. The first action that you take in a turn will always be to place a tile. You had to spend your first action point by placing a tile. The tiles may come from your personal supply. You have a number of 2 hexes and 1 hex tiles that you can place, or there is also shared supply of larger tiles that show 2 hexes of farmland and 1 hex of settlement. Those hexes representing settlements may represent villages or cities. They represent a city if there is a temple on one of them. So as my first action, and let's say I decide to do that, then I can spend another action point, adding another one, and I can go higher as long as, again, things are not hanging out in a weird way. You can't have just things sticking out. That doesn't make any sense. Also, another thing, you cannot place a tile exactly top of a tile of the same shape. So that is it. I cannot place a tile exactly that. And so more interesting shapes will emerge because of that. And we're trying to go as high as possible. That is really pretty important here. So action points can be spent, and at least one must be spent to place a terrain tile on the board. Then we can jump on the board with our meeples. It costs a movement point to enter the board from the forest. So if I'm getting there, later in the game there may be tiles all the way on the other side that shows a mountain, and it takes 2 action points to get on the board from the mountain because it's hidden that way. It's a mountain. That should be self-explanatory. Now, when your meeples are on the board, they can move for free any length, any distance, as long as they don't change terrain. So all of that, yippee, is all for free. And there you go, buddy. More free movement. Isn't that great? You spend an action point when moving a meeple. They move onto a different kind of terrain regardless of elevation. Up or down, doesn't matter. So that's for movement. That's pretty much it. Get on the board and then move around for free and just spend points there. Now, when you are in a village that doesn't have a temple, you can choose to start one. When you're in a village and you are in the highest elevation, and if there is a tie of your meeple being the highest elevation as someone else's meeples, then it's about who has majority at that elevation. Still a tie, you look at the next elevation, see who is in the highest position, and so on and so forth. Right now, I'm the only player there, so I definitely am in the highest position, and I can spend an action point to place a temple there. And we have these components here, very similar to what you have in Tikal, that can be stacked with different numerical values to create temples. The maximum is 10. Very cute, very nice. That would be a complete temple. The temple that I place, the number on it must be basically I cannot place a number there if it's higher than the number of hexes in that settlement. So actually right now that is a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I could even start just with a number 5, and you know what, I'm gonna do that just because. Suppose that later this is expanded this way. Now that has 6 hexes, I could choose to spend an action point, and again, if I am the one who is in the highest position, so I got that privilege there, I could turn that into a 6. So that's how temples are built and then increased. I can also spend an action point to put down these like mini lakes, like irrigation basins, I think they're called. And why would I do that? Because they look very pretty. I like that color. Another important thing is this. When a single lake is surrounded by land, like that would be the case if I spend an action point now to place that there, then the player who has the most meeples adjacent to that lake, that would be me. Right now I got 2, and you got 0. That player scores 3 points per hex in that mini lake. So that's 9 points right there. So that's pretty cool. It's a pretty powerful action. Now, for an action point, you can also choose to collect a festival card. This is something that was pretty different from Tikal. So far, you know, things that kind of resemble Tikal, with the fact that with this big difference, you can move a lot faster. These cards have 3 suits representing different kinds of artifacts that we really love to have at our festivals. And at the beginning of the game, you take one, you flip it face up to start the discard pile. That is important. When I collect festival cards, I can take that one, in which case another one goes there, or I can draw from here. Suppose I just spent 2 actions to do that. Now, I just collect, and I cannot collect more than 2 cards per turn, and I do that by spending 2 action points. When during my turn, I can also choose once per turn to declare a festival. That doesn't cost any actions. The festival is a special event, like a mini game, to which any player who has meeples in that city can participate. So I will need to indicate where I want to have a festival. Right now I want to have it there. Festivals held in locations with temples, with high numbers, with high points will give you more points. So those are more valuable, of course. Also, you score points, of course, when you build layers of the temple. That's one of the reasons why you do it. The reason? One of the reasons. When we have a festival, we look at the card on top of the discard pile, and that tells you the artifacts or artifact, it may be just one, that will be used in that festival. Then starting with the player that declared the festival, they play a card that matches at least one of those. And then everybody has a chance of playing more cards, and you continue like this until the players, so either there's a player that emerges that has contributed more to the festival than anybody else, and everybody has given up or they can't play any cards anymore, in which case the player individually, singly, leads the festival, or players end up in a tie or decide to end up in a tie. They still have cards to play, but they decide that enough is enough, that the arm race has already consumed enough resources, and so they decide that's to share the glory. So at the end, when all the cards have been played, victory points are assigned. If you lead the festival alone, then you score that many victory points based on the number on top of the temple. If you share the festival, all people that share the participation or the organization of the festival score that many points based on again the level, the number on top of the temple. And these are the actions, and that is the main idea, really. So you will score points during the game itself because of festivals, because of temples that you build, because of the lakes that you increase. And again, so many things are based on being in the highest position. So there's a really interesting puzzle there. At the end of the game, when the final triple terrain has been placed, when it's placed, that player that plays that completes their final grand scoring, which means they check to see how many points they score for being the highest in each city, and they score that many points. If they're the second in a city, they still get to score half of those points. Then the next player goes, they take one last turn, and then they do their own final scoring. So final scoring is sequential, which also means you still get one turn, a chance maybe of changing something before the final scoring is established. So the final grand scoring for each player is added to the points that they collected before, and the player with the highest total wins the game. And so this is how you play Cuzco, which is, to me, a considerable improvement over Tikal. It just plays better, it flows better. 6 action points instead of 10 give me just what I need, just enough agency to be able to create strategy in a lot of different directions. This turn I do one thing, the next turn I do a different combination. And also they give me that really desirable sense of scarcity that I like in games, because 6 actions ain't bad, but I never not ever get to do all that I want. I'm always short of just one action. And there's something interesting here. Each player also has 3 tokens that can be used once per turn, 3 times per game, to give an extra action. So if there is a turn where you really need 7 actions, you can do that. And that, to me, that flexibility, the limited flexibility, is also great, because it would be annoying. Like, oh my gosh, I had that great plan, I'm just one short, so I need to rethink everything. No, you don't. Spend one of these tokens. So you got plenty of flexibility to devise your strategy and go in completely different ways every time. And that's really good. And a lot of interactions, because there is an element, of course, of area control. To build a temple, I need to be in the highest position. And that's super important. To score points at the end, I need to be in the highest position. So you can really manipulate things in a lot of different fun way. Like, this player here is really high there. And also, the player cleverly plays the temple in the next highest. So that makes it harder for people to compete. A lot of different things happen as the elevation changes. The board becomes more complex. You can go up to get control. You can go out, occupying space to score with those little mini lakes, which are very powerful. So many different strategies in a game that is very manageable, very flows very well, very accessible. Matter of fact, I play with my family, I played with my kids that are now and 11, so this is definitely a game that you can play with younger players. We tried to convince mom, but she was still a bit traumatized by Tickle and by the analysis paralysis and slow pace of that game, and so she didn't enjoy that quite as much. But this one doesn't have that problem. It flows better. Instead of spending actions over actions to move as you have to do in Tika, honestly, the free movement, as long as you don't change terrain, you can go really far. It's fun. And then you can really, okay, this city here, I don't need so many people guarding it. So now I can easily go and start somewhere else. And different things like that. So you just have a much more flexible structure. And really so many different ways. You have the best temple and somebody starts a festival somewhere and they still get to score good points. You build a good temple, somebody manages to get, again, they have a nice set of cards and they start a festival around that temple. And they still get to score a lot of points. Somebody scores points that way. They forgot the lakes. I go over the lakes. I forgot something else. Lot of different things going on. It's a very satisfying game that gives you, the feel of a well-developed Euro. Definitely in the middle range. It's not light. It's not heavy. I would say it's kind of the perfect embodiment of what a middle-weight Euro game should be. Plenty of options, plenty of strategy, virtually almost no luck whatsoever. There is luck in the cards, but other than that is you planning your actions. So great agency, very approachable, simple to play, but with interesting strategy. We definitely enjoyed Cuzco. The production is simply stunning, from the meeples, the thick tokens, the temples, everything looks and feels top notch. The player rate is great. So I'm very pleased, I'm very happy with Cuzco. We played it 2 and 3 players, so I cannot comment on the 4th player count, but with that amount of players, and even with the young players, so like the ones I play most of my games with these days, Cusco definitely has been a success, and one that my family and I, my kids and I, enjoyed very much.